Yes, we are live. Yep. Welcome back to the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I'm your host, Joe Laney Pavlon. Tonight, or should I say this afternoon, it's another episode with me just by myself. Co-hosts are out. It's another day. Yep, daytime. You can see the background. Daylight savings time does not lie. I am doing this at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So hello if you're tuning in after I go live. In case you missed it, well, always have the recording of the stream. I have a lot to break down from this past weekend in the world of motorsports. I'm going to start off with Formula One. The World Championship is still far from done. Lewis Hamilton made sure of that. And we'll get into what happened in Macau for the 68th running of the Macau Grand Prix, the local Chinese region's premier racing classic held every fall in the third week of November. I'll break all that down for you. And history was made once again in this street circuit classic. Supercars, a new champion is crowned. We'll talk about how that finished the 4-week quadrilogy. If that's even a word, who cares? The quadrilogy at Sydney Motorsport Park. The 4 weekend bout came to an end, and the stage is set for Bathurst coming next weekend. That will take a lot of discussing for sure. Needed to break down in the championships. Congratulations to Shane Van Gisbergen and Triple Eight, the Red Bull and Pole Racing team, the Holden team, Triple Eight Racing Engineering champions once again. Sports car, I'll definitely dive deep into everything that happened at Sebring. I was there, and history continues to repeat itself in the World Rally Championship. That will need its own discussion. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to all of us Americans. This is the week to give thanks for all that contribute to everybody having the best fruits of life. I mean, listen, I'm not here to preach. I'm here to talk motorsports. If you want to hear about preaching, go to Motorsport Ministries. Armani will fix you up with that on Spotify. Well, Qatar was a very unique Grand Prix, especially for a first-time venue. I mean, the venue, well, is no stranger to the World Championship stage. Of course, it's been hosting pretty much for most years the start of MotoGP. Of course, we're talking about Grand Prix motorcycles on 2 wheels. Now we got to see them on 4 wheels. And prior to this race, the only occasions of vehicles with 4 wheels competing for glory at the Losail International Circuit was really just the FIA's Touring Car Championship or the GP2 Asia Series that had one weekend there in 2009. A lot of people go back to that, especially leading into the Formula One Grand Prix. A few drivers, including Sergio Perez, were in that race. But if you really look into all of the questions going into the Qatar Grand Prix, it was, does Lewis Hamilton have to do more than what he did to win at Brazil? The answer was yes. And the reason for that was, he had to put a Lewis Hamilton Mercedes performance together that we did not see as much this year as we've seen in the years leading up to 2021. And he did just that. Lewis Hamilton leading all 57 laps from the pole position, his 102nd career pole. Ironically, that number is also the amount of wins that he has picked up in his storied Formula One career. 102 times he's been on the top step of the podium, and for the 7th time this year, that is 180th career podium. I'm sure if he keeps racing like this, we might see the 200 mark be set for the first time ever by a Formula One driver on podiums. The one thing that Lewis Hamilton did not get was what Max Verstappen got, and that was the fastest lap. And Max Verstappen, we're going to talk Max for a moment. He picked up the fastest lap, took a risk in the closing laps to make sure he bettered his previous fastest lap. With 1 lap to spare, he had a huge gap over Fernando Alonso to where second place was a guarantee whether he pitted or not. And Max Verstappen did just that in the penultimate lap. He came out of the pits, then followed that up with one flyer, which obliterated his fastest lap, giving Max Verstappen the extra point. I said it once and I'll say it again, that extra point for fastest lap might just be the decider of this year's World Championship, or it could very well be a decider of future World Championships. I said this 2 years ago on some of our first ever episodes from spring of 2019, that this could be the case, and here we are. Max Verstappen did just that, and his 58th career podium. This is going to give the top two drivers in World Championships 8 points of separation with 2 races to spare. While it is mathematically possible to clinch a World Championship, I will get into that after I go through the results. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, if you're whoever you're cheering on, both your drivers have a lot of work to do from here to the very end. And like I said, it's more likely than not that the World Championship will be determined at the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi. Third place, and this is oh man, I'm so happy to say this for the first time. I didn't think most fans were going to be able to see this for quite some time, over 7.5 years, almost 8 years to be exact, since Fernando Alonso picked up his 97th career podium. And today, or 2 days ago, feels like today, 2 days ago, Fernando Alonso finally picked up his 98th career podium. First time since Hungary of 2014, when he was a driver for Scuderia Ferrari, and now as an Alpine driver, a podium, a well-deserved podium. He started third in the Grand Prix and had an absolutely stellar run. I mean, the guy's 40 years old. He just turned 40. He's been in Formula One for 20 plus years, of course, aside of Kimi Räikkönen. And it's just amazing to see. And it puts a grin on my face because I was a little kid when he was winning world championships, that Fernando Alonso could still get it done and end up on the podium. I feel like with a guy like Alonso, he can be racing for maybe 5 or 10 more years. I wouldn't be surprised if he picks up more sports car crown jewel trophies in his 50s at this rate. Congratulations to Fernando Alonso, age 40, and still going strong. And he's going to be back in the grid next year, which is even better, to say the least. Let's continue on. And this is where it gets very important for Red Bull. Red Bull getting the double points with Sergio Perez in fourth. Like I said, the Mexican driver had experience at the Qatar circuit from his days in the GP2 Asia Series in 2009, and it very well might have paid off because Red Bull had to take advantage the moment Bottas was retired from the race with an under tray failure. Sergio Perez had to execute and try to either keep the fast lap or make sure that it wasn't Hamilton with the fastest lap or anybody else outside of Max Verstappen. And Perez, while he was unable to catch Alonso for the podium spot due to some yellow flags in the sectors in the closing laps, or I think it was a virtual safety car they put out for clearance of, I believe it was Latifi's car. That was enough for Perez to get the double points. And the difference now is 5 points in the World Constructors Championship. I'll break that down later on. Let's continue through the results. Fifth place, brilliant effort for Esteban Ocon and the Alpine Renault team. They get double points. Third and fifth, that is huge in the World Constructors Championship for Alpine in a year that will be impossible to forget for all the right reasons. Sixth place, how about the Canadian of Lance Stroll? Finally, he gets points for the first time since God knows how long. I mean, let's go back and see when Lance Stroll last got points, and that was all the way back in Istanbul with a 9th place finish. And aside from his drought from Hungary to the Netherlands, he got another points finish in Italy. But this was his best finish for Lance Stroll's season, and it's well-deserved. He stayed out of trouble, kept the car clean, and for someone who's hardly ever raced at Losail in Doha, Qatar, that was a valiant effort. 7th place and 8th place, the Ferrari drivers Carlos Sainz Jr., who started 5th, and Charles Leclerc, who started 13th, was out of Q3, but managed to finish 8th and giving Ferrari, once again, double points. This is going to propel them in the World Constructors Championship. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But when can we talk about points finishers without bringing up the subject of Lando Norris? Lando Norris finds a way, despite a rocky Grand Prix, just like last week, it was last week, was so hard to believe, finds his way into the final point spots. 2 points is still points. He got it done for McLaren, but now McLaren is starting to wave goodbye to third in the World Constructors Championship at this rate. Depends. It seems like when one driver is in the points and the other driver is not. It's been that trend since the big first and second place finish at the 1-2 finish they had in the Italian Grand Prix. And the final point goes to Sebastian Vettel, who started 10th, giving Aston Martin double points. Pierre Gasly, a very gutting race for him. He's been very strong in the World Drivers' Championship, especially for AlphaTauri. And starting second was huge for Gasly, but it just didn't translate into the checkered flag. He finished 11th. Daniel Ricciardo had a struggling weekend from start to finish, 14th off the grid. He finished 12th. Yuki Tsunoda finished in 13th. Kimi Räikkönen finishing 14th ahead of his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi, which we now know will not return into the Sauber-fielded Alfa Romeo racing entry that, of course, next year will be fielded by or be driven by Guan Yu Zhou. That will be for another discussion. 16th place, Mick Schumacher, who started 3 spots behind. 17th place was George Russell. I mean, you can only do so much in a Williams. In 18th place, Nikita Mazepin, who started 20th. 2 retirements included Nicholas Latifi on lap 50 for a puncture, and he was unable to drive the car back, so he had to pull over to one of the access roads where the marshals were. Latifi started 17th. And Valtteri Bottas, the biggest killer for Mercedes in the World Constructors Championship, was Bottas having a broken undertree after a major puncture. He retired on lap 48 after starting 6th, and that's where Mercedes will be held vulnerable in this World Constructors Championship. And there will be 2 weeks of anticipation, 2 weeks to think about it, because the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is coming, ready or not, on December 5th. For the penultimate round of the World Championship. That's one more off week, and then back in action at a circuit that last time I've heard a report on is not even 100% finished. And I don't even remember if it's been over a calendar year that the facility was granted the Formula One Grand Prix date or not. Maybe it was like October of last year. I'm just going to keep it clean and say that, it's a new venue. No one knows what's up until it happens. And there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of nervousness with the drivers and teams. I'd say that it's been pretty hard to discuss the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix through the garage that I've seen on TV and interviews. It's because they just want to redirect the conversation to what's going on in the World Championship, and that's exactly correct. The World Championship, the World Drivers' Championship, the World Constructors Championship, 2 races to spare, and not even double-digit points separate drivers nor the constructors from first to second. It's really come down to the wire in this year's World Championship. We're going to talk about the World Drivers' Championship now before we dive into the Formula One World Constructors Championship. Max Verstappen with 351.5 points. His gap is 8 points over Lewis Hamilton at 343.5 points. Remember, Max got that fastest lap at the very end, which really kept the gap from going down from 8 to 7. Hamilton, of course, did everything minus that he needed to do to win as many points as possible. Hamilton looking for his record-breaking 8th World Drivers' Championship, and Verstappen looking to be the first Red Bull driver champion since Sebastian Vettel in 2013 and break the Mercedes driving dynasty that has been the majority of the 2010s leading into today, pretty much all the turbo hybrid era. Valtteri Bottas is kind of in range for third in the World Drivers' Championship, 203 points. That's 23 points. Or actually, no, that's 13 points ahead of Sergio Perez, the second, I don't want to say secondary Red Bull, the other Red Bull driver. 190 points. Of course, Bottas sitting at 203 points. He never got any points out of the retirement from Sunday's race. Fifth place, Lando Norris, 2 points higher than Charles Leclerc. Leclerc at 152 points. Carlos Sainz Jr. at 145 points. Those positions are still up for grabs in the World Drivers' Championship. Eighth place, of course, sitting at 105 points after scoring 0 in Sunday's Qatar Grand Prix, Daniel Ricciardo. Ninth place, Pierre Gasly looked to have a good point stay, but it just wasn't meant to be. He sits at 92 points. And 10th place, Fernando Alonso jumps up to 10th in the World Drivers' Championship with 77 points in the bag this year. Now, the World Constructors Championship hasn't slowed down either. The 7-time World Constructors Championship of program of Mercedes AMG Petronas F1, 546.5 points. That's 5 points, just 5 points over Red Bull Racing Honda at 541.5 points. Remember, Red Bull got 4 consecutive Constructors Championships with Sebastian Vettel. Drink your water. Third place, Ferrari. Now, we looked at how Ferrari and McLaren were going to settle this. It takes 2 in the Constructors' Championship, and that's where Ferrari has been succeeding in the last several races. So they have 297.5 points, while McLaren Mercedes, with seeming like just 1 or 2 drivers gets points, very few points that is, in the last few races, 258 points. McLaren might have said goodbye to third in the World Constructors Championships, but it's still far from over. What I'm saying is Ferrari has third in the WCC. They have the upper hand in that battle. Fifth place right now, Alpine Renault. They really propelled in this race. Of course, it used to be AlphaTauri Honda, but Alpine Renault overtake AlphaTauri for fifth in the World Constructors Championship. They have 137 points. While in sixth place, AlphaTauri with 112 points. Aston Martin, Mercedes, definitely a good double points race for them. Very satisfying to leave a circuit after a race like the one they had, but it's still 77 points. That's how high they have on the count right now. But still a lot more work to do. Something crazy has to happen to AlphaTauri and miraculously happen on the other side of luck for Aston Martin to catch sixth of the World Constructors Championship. Other than that, I think fifth is off the table, 2 races to spare. Williams Mercedes, obviously a better year for the Williams program, but 23 points is pretty much from their luck in the summer stretch, and that's pretty much it. Ninth place, Alfa Racing Ferrari. Both drivers did receive points on their own within those 11 points. And of course, with the big fat 0 is Haas Ferrari. Well, I will say is that one more off week, these teams, I mean, listen, I know Thanksgiving's an American holiday, but at least they don't have to sit on a table and discuss to their family members what's going on behind the scenes, because it's just been a year of blood, sweat, and tears for every party involved in this year's World Championship. When the year started, COVID-19 was still very prevalent. Masks, I mean, there's still, I think the FIA wants to continue the mask mandate at least till the end of the year, just to continue the logistics without problems, at least to the end of 2021. But when the year started, we still had like limited capacity or no capacity in a few of the Grand Prix. I don't think we had an empty house since spring this year, which is actually pretty good. I mean, Qatar, I know it was a filler race, and we still might face filler races. Hopefully, no more by the end of the year. Of course, compared to the end of last year, we still had to face more realities of the pandemic. But at the end of this year, it looks like there should be no filler races at all for 2022, unless otherwise proven otherwise. And hope that's not the case at all. I think there's no excuse anymore. But Qatar as a new facility, I think is great for Formula One. Sure, people might say it needs to change. There was hardly any zones to overtake other than the front stretch. Well, the track was made for motorcycles, 2 wheels, not 4. Of course, that's most of I think the lap record on 4 wheels definitely was obliterated with Formula One, but it was hard to pick up information from a GP2 race in 2009. But the main protagonists in this year's championship, this year's World Championship, so all parties involved did a great job. And of course, the issue with Valtteri Bottas was out of his control. I mean, no one besides bad luck can cut a tire and ruin your race. Outside of that, Verstappen is probably going to live the longest half month, 3/4 of a month of his life. If he wants to win this World Championship, he's got to be absolutely perfect. I think it's a case of Felipe Massa, except if Massa won the World Championship from 2008, still people are just polarized to this day about how that World Championship came to an ending. And I see why. It's tough to beat Lewis Hamilton. It was tough when Hamilton was new to F1 to beat him, and it's even tougher now. And Max Verstappen has put all of his cards to the table. I think it's so close. I don't even know what it's going to look like. We're going to, like I said, 2 weeks to think about it between now and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and then the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, as if, Max won last year, right? Well, guess what? A good number of parts of the circuit and the Yas Marina circuit, good parts of it, have been changed up. So now cornering will be very differently conducted by the drivers than, of course, what we saw last year when Max Verstappen had that dominating victory. And that, the littlest of changes will still be enough to be trying on your end if you're trying to win a championship. Of course, that is psychology 101. With that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and check out an event from this time of the year that I believe proved to be great. While we didn't get to have our traditional Grand Prix in Macau, it certainly was a very interesting race to watch, to say the least. And we're going to break all that down now with the Macau Grand Prix for 2021. And just like last year, Charles Leong taking the win. I think it shows to the single-seater teams, because it really is a showcase, whether or not the global drivers junior drivers from Formula 3 are there or not. You're still on the spotlight. Charles Leong did everything he needed to do to get the win. He led all 12 laps from the pole, and those 12 long laps are treacherous. You go through Macau. It's like trying to speed through a parallel parking lot that's full at some parts of the track, and then you have to throw everything out the window at certain parts of the circuit where the start-finish line meets and those few half off throttle kinked corners. It's a tough circuit, and I know I play NR 2003 online. I love that game. I want to find a Macau circuit out there that I could download. I'm sure maybe 1 or 2 of them are out, and see how narrow those parts of the circuit are. So that hairpin, that downhill bridge hairpin, I think that's what they call it. Kind of looks like Monaco in a way. That hard right-hander is literally one groove. You cannot even think about passing. When they crash there at any part of the circuit, there's nowhere to hide. Chances are you're in it. It's like a Talladega big one that you see in NASCAR. It's just a matter of luck and talent, but talent does win this race, at least for qualifying, that is. If you could put a really good lap there, uh, it's definitely a very impressive accomplishment. And let's talk about Charles Leong, of course, Smart Life Racing Team get their second win in the Macau Grand Prix, second in a row, as did Leong himself. And the 20-year-old becomes or actually becomes the very first Macanese driver to win more than once in this big race, the 68th running of the Macau Grand Prix. Charles Leong is the first Macanese driver to win it more than once. I think he's the third or fourth driver from Macau to win the Grand Prix. Second place went to Andy Chang. He actually got the fastest lap, and looked like Andy Chang for quite a while at the start of the Grand Prix was going to find any way possible to get around Leong. But before the narrow corners began, as soon as the narrow corners began, Leong had the preferred line, and the rest is history. He put almost a minute gap on the field, 30 seconds or so. Third place was Li Si Cheng. He got the podium, a very impressive run for Li Si Cheng. Jing Si Feng got fourth, Li Chao fifth, Sheng Zong Yi sixth, Liu Jingzi seventh, Brian Lee eighth, Wei Chao Yin ninth, and Peng Shi Shin rounded out the top 10 for this year's edition of the Macau Grand Prix. Other positions include Matt Lock, which a driver like his caliber was very highly anticipated to be up in the running, but just had bad luck going into the main race. Li Kick Men 12th, James Wong 13th, Lin Li Feng was the last finishing driver in the race in 14th. We had two retirements that were, of course, from the lap one crash entering the first narrow corner. Of course, if you're not in the preferred line, you're done. And it's just how Macau works. So unfortunately for Patrick Singh and Wang Yu Ming, they were the two drivers that failed to complete the opening lap. Now, of course, with the Macau Grand Prix, unfortunately for the second year in a row, due to the pandemic and restrictions from mainland China, they were the Grand Prix was not able to hold the prestigious motorcycle Grand Prix of Macau. But we did have other prestigious events held at the circuit during the weekend, including the Guia race, the GT events, as well as some other touring car and challenge events. So I'm going to lead off the winners. Of course, the GT Cup was won by Daryl O'Young for the Kraft Bmw Racing Team. They've been racing in the Intercontinental GT Challenge. O'Young drove a Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo, and he's been a big name for racing in that part of the region. Of course, being from Hong Kong, he's very talented across multiple levels of GT racing. Then we talk about the Guia race, which is ran by FIA TCR regulations, and that was won by Zhang Qiang for the Shell Teamwork Racing Lynk & Co. 03 TCR car that he was driving. Of course, Lynk & Co. is a part of Geely Automobile, the Chinese manufacturing group that actually has high affiliations with Volvo, with older TCR regulations back in the WTCC era, leading into the TCR World Championship era that we're in. So a very good race for Zhang and the Shell Teamwork Racing entry. In fact, they finished first and second in that race. Speaking of touring cars, we'll talk about the Macau Touring Car Cup. We had Célio Alves Diaz winning in a Mini Cooper S provided by Fu Lei Long Racing Team. Then back with more GT racing, we had the GT4 Challenge, also known as the Greater Bay Area GT Cup, and that was a dominating race by BMW driver Chen Shang for Harmony Racing. He drove a BMW M4 Gt3. And last but not least, we had the Macau Challenge Cup that was won by Wan Wang Long in a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 10. He had a very dominant race from start to finish, and that's pretty much Macau for you. You have to really be brave around the circuit, and it shows every year, regardless of the main event, regardless of who's in it. The track it's I want to say it's like Darlington or Monaco. It's just there's no definition of Macau other than treacherous. And of course, congratulations to Charles Leong on his second win, just 20 years old. And I hope some high caliber single seater teams around the globe take a chance on him. I would like to see him maybe compete in the Formula 2 grid or Formula 3 or wherever. There's a good, bright future in motorsport for him. And to win this race twice, that's a huge accomplishment, especially for someone being in the Macau region. Speaking of that region in the globe, we'll talk about racing in the land down under. For the fourth and final time in Sydney Motorsport Park, we had the MotoGP. How did I go to MotoGP? MotoGP stunt. I meant to say supercars. I don't know. I'm still fantasizing of the idea of a Macau motorcycle race that didn't happen for the second year in a row. But yeah, Sydney Motorsport Park for the Supercars Championship. Shane Van Gisbergen took home his 54th career win. He led for 3 laps in race 1, started 4th in the race. Just 3 laps. Of course, the race was definitely decided a lot by heavy rain towards the end of the race. Both races were 64 laps long, right, instead of the Super Sprint 32 lap races that we've had, because there were only 2 races this weekend. So it was 32 plus 2, 64 for each race, 64 laps in both races. 148 podiums for Shane Van Gisbergen. And Jamie Whincup, his teammate, how fitting for the AAA guys at Red Bull Ampol Racing in Holden. Jamie Whincup, in the dusk of a historic Supercars career, 7 championships and 4 Bathurst 1000 wins. Whincup brings it home in second on the podium with his teammate, the longtime veteran, 267 career podiums. His 17 laps led. It looked like there was a chance that Whincup could have won, but it just wasn't meant to be. And third place, Cameron Waters, a nice turnaround at Sydney for Cam. He led for 39 laps. Had the race looking like it was in the bag, but the weather just did him dirty. Fourth place, Anton De Pasquale. While leading no laps, he still got his 11th career pole. I think it's going to be a huge advantage for next year. In terms of momentum and confidence, Anton De Pasquale is all that right now. And Chaz Marcer rounding out the top 5. A nice valiant effort for the Waukesha and Shreddy United team, finishing 5th. Scott Pye in 6th. Will Brown in 7th after leading 5 laps. He started 16th. In 8th place, Brody Kostecki for a 5th place starting spot. Not a bad effort. 9th place, Will Davison. Davison started 3rd. And Nick Percat rounded out the top 10. He started in 7th. And with race 2 being abandoned due to poor weather conditions, the race did not count, and therefore we have champions crowned. Congratulations to Shane Van Gisbergen of Auckland, New Zealand, becoming a 2-time Supercars champion. That is a huge deal. Supercar champion. Seems like the streak for New Zealand drivers continue since 2018 onward. The Drivers' Championship has come from the Kiwis, and Shane Van Gisbergen clinches his 2nd career championship. He won it in 2016 driving for the same team 5 years ago. 5 years later, he wins it again. Jamie Whincup, the 7-time champion. Of course, he finished 2nd in the Sydney race, which was enough for AAA to get their 10th team championship. We'll talk about that. By the way, it's the 9th championship for 888 Race Engineering, the Red Bull Ampol team. In their storied history, 888 winning championships from 2008, 2009, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2016, 2017, and of course, 2021. And it's just another great showing for them. And 888 Race Engineering win their 10th teams championship. Remember, they won in 2008, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. They had that huge stretch of consecutive teams championships from 2010 to 2016 until the Fords at Dick Johnson Racing, formerly known as DJR Team Penske, knocked them out in 2017 before winning another one in 2018 and in 2021 this year. That it means they get 10. Congratulations to the Red Bull Ample team, the Holden support, of course, Roland Dane, Mark Dundon, all the guys at Triple Eight Race Engineering that put such passion into the sport of Australian motorsport. Just absolutely phenomenal. Another year of successful team. I mean, you just got to appreciate, and of course for Jamie Whincup, it's going to be kind of sad not to see him on the full-time grid next year. No doubt he's probably going to run in the Enduro Cup, especially for Bathurst, and I'll be very happy, still be very happy if they put him with Craig Lowndes for the Bathurst 1000. Meanwhile, with one race to go in this year's Supercars Championship for 2021, the top five, Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, with the second championship of his career being clinched. He leads with 28-28 on the points board, while Jamie Whincup, his teammate, second with 24-79 on the points board. Third place, Will Davison with 22-33 points, the highest Ford driver in the field, of course, compared to the two Holden drivers above him. Chas Mostert in fourth with 21.94 points, and Cam Waters fifth with 20.93 points. The team's championship, of course, clinched by Triple Eight Race Engineering, Red Bull Ample Holden Racing Team. 53.07 on the points board for them. Dick Johnson Racing second, of course, their first year in Supercars after the Penske Alliance with 43.08 points-wise. Tickford Racing in third with 35.48 points. So Holden, Ford, Holden, and Holden with the two Holden teams, Shaw and Andretti United, 34.63 points. And Erebus Motorsport really doing well lately with 32.78 points, with the 4 race weekends of Sydney coming to an end. That means the one and only race to be decided is the biggest race of them all, and that, of course, is the Bathurst 1000 for 2021. The 64th running of the great race. Just what else could we say about this circuit besides it's a track of its own, and with the entries that are on board, we have 25 cars on the entry list, including one wild card. Of course, the Gary Rogers Motorsport entry was pulled out because the government over there is still mean. I'm going to keep it like that. But a third AAA entry is out. And this entry, of course, being Russell Ingall. How could we not forget the 2005 champion, Russell Ingall? He's going to come out of retirement at age 57. The Bathurst 1000 winner from 1995 and 1997. The man they call the Enforcer. I'm excited to see him back. There's no question about that. And of course, Brock Feeney, the young man of just 19 years of age, will be taking over Jamie Whincup's prestigious ride at Triple Eight Race Engineering next year. And of course, next year will be officially confirmed the last year of Holden's on the grid before the General Motors team switched to Chevrolet Camaros in 2023 with the new Gen 3 kit. That will be out in 2023. It was already confirmed a month ago. So at least one more year with the famous brand of Holden. I'm very excited, yet kind of still sad to say that it's going to be all in the past. But, it's going to be very fun to watch, especially the qualifying sessions. The top 10 shootout at Bathurst is always the most epic thing to watch. the whole weekend besides the race itself. And till then, we have a week off. Everybody, of course, spending pretty much moving all their stuff to spend 4 consecutive weekends in Sydney, New South Wales at the same circuit from the end of October to this past weekend. Then they go to Bathurst in New South Wales at Mount Panorama. They get a week off to move everything over there. And actually, the race week starts from, I think, Monday or Tuesday of the Bathurst 1000 weekend till the Great Race, which is Sunday, or for us in this part of the world, Saturday night. That's going to be for another discussion because we have more racing to talk about. We're going to bring up some endurance racing. Very interesting discussion on its own for endurance sports car racing. That's what's coming next. Let's bring up the finale for this year's 24H series, and I was glad to be there. We had the inaugural Hankook 24 hours of Sebring this past weekend for the 7th and final race of the 2021 24H series season. And of course, this championship dates all the way back to early to mid-January. I forgot when the date was for the Dubai 24 hours this year. And it came all the way here back. Nice to see them back to the United States after COVID affecting last year, wiping the COTA 24 hours off the calendar. So let me break this down. Last year, if you guys, it feels like forever ago, but the weekend of November 15th, 14th, 15th, last year was the 12 hours of Sebring makeup date for of course, the classic 12-hour race at Sebring that we have every March. Was like one of the very first events wiped off due to what was then known as coronavirus before it became COVID-19 and affected everybody, literally. That was the first event in major sports car racing to be put aside. Little did we know everything would be put aside, but that was the first event. It was the mid-March 12 hours of Sebring from 2020. They immediately said we're going to race it in November, and of course, Florida being very helpful with making things work. We had the race held last year with a nice, sizable crowd, and during that weekend, of course, I was watching it from TV, enjoying my birthday last year. We learned that the track made an announcement with the Kraventik 24H series that next year's 24H series season will finish at Sebring should all the logistics work with the COVID-19 Cup was being cleared by November of 2021. The race will be held at Sebring to close the 2021 season. And of course, there's never been a 24-hour race at Sebring. Let's talk about how treacherous that circuit is just for 12 hours there. And that pretty much is all what you need to sum up the circuit. Sebring International Raceway, what used to be World War II airport surface, turned into a racetrack at the dawn of the 1950s in that beautiful small town of Sebring, Florida, became a hotspot for sports car racing fanatics with the inaugural 12-hour race in 1950, and the rest is history. We got to see a 24-hour race with, ironically, 24 cars, but I will say, with what we saw and what I saw at the track was very great racing. It was just unique from your average endurance race. Of course, Sebring being on the map. I think maybe the idea of having the 12-hour race, the postponed date from November of last year, was helpful for the idea of having a big event on a mid-November weekend for the next year, and this is a good way to keep it on a permanent schedule. I'm glad that it's on the table for next year, because I definitely want to be back there for the 12-hour race. I definitely want to go back there. Sebring was awesome. I'm going to be honest. The people are nice. Everybody seemed to be friendly, from waiters, waitresses to track workers, and just the people that stood next to you, whether it was on the campgrounds or in the stands. I can't count any bad experience except for the people at the hotel room, which decided that 2 hours early was just perfectly fine for us to check out. But that's um, the least of what happened. I was happy. It was nice to take the drive up there. And to be honest, I'll do it again. I recommend anybody that wants to go check out an endurance race, especially in Florida, go to Sebring. It's just awesome. And not to mention, they're very laid back with what you can do when you buy a ticket there. You don't have to sit in certain seats. Of course, maybe Daytona is done differently. I'm sure NASCAR fans, know that going to a NASCAR race is much different to a sports car race, because with a NASCAR ticket, you have to sit in your assigned seat, much like going to a football game. But with endurance racing and a track like Sebring or tracks like Road America, you can go anywhere with an admission ticket and a parking ticket. And that was fun. So we got to really enjoy all parts of the circuit for when I was there. And of course, with American racing, the Parc Fermé is literally accessible to anybody, with or without credentials, which was cool to check that out post race. That's all for another discussion. Let's take a look at what happened on the racetrack. And before the race even started, there were problems with logistics, as far as the cargo transport for European teams, as far as the cargo ships where they were supposed to travel. Severe weather got in the way, and we had about a day and a half delay, actually 2 days of delay to be exact, for the European teams. Of course, the Kraventik series being a European dominated series for sports car racing. Most teams couldn't even get their cars until the big transporting cargoes that came in on Friday night arrived. And the series was pretty much helpful enough to say that the track is open through the whole overnight process to the end of qualifying before we had to enable Parc Fermé for the race. They were very understanding on the teams that had to wait extra for their cars, and luckily everybody that stayed entered got their cars late Friday night, going into Saturday. So Saturday was crunch time. Practice, the session turned right into qualifying about 11:30 a.m. local time. And after the qualifying session happened, it was an impromptu qualifying session. So if you guys watch NASCAR, that's a little bit of a sneak peek for what to expect in the Cup Series weekend for 2022. And the teams spent hours and hours just to put the cars together. For some teams, it was like the 48 hours of Sebring to get the cars ready from Friday to Saturday, and from Saturday to Sunday, working on the cars during the actual race. The start time was very unique as well due to the logistics issues, because on Saturday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, an hour before an hour before sunset. So literally, most sports car 24-hour races, no matter what time of the year, say what you want about daily savings time events like Dubai and Daytona, would have a good period of time at the start of the race in the daylight, then have their night hours, depending on the time of the year or the location. That's up for you to decide. And then they have a good amount of time in the day for the finish. Well, let's say the race started as sunset nearly begins. They have about 30 to 45 minutes, and then it's 16 hours of darkness. I think John Heinhoff from the Radio Le Mans commentary said it was about 16 hours of full darkness. That's even longer than Daytona and Dubai, for, of course, being being held for the duration under full darkness. That's, when you look at Le Mans, it's like 6 or 7 hours under full darkness. Very short amount of time under nighttime conditions, based off the summer, on the summer event. Spa, of course, doesn't have too many hours under the dark. Nürburgring for the 24-hour race over there. You guys know how it works in those parts of the year. And with the cold track, The rain kept coming on and off, on and off. The start was under wet conditions. We had an hour red flag Sunday morning around, I think, 10:30, 11 a.m. to about 12 to 12:30 p.m. The cars were put under a red flag due to excessive standing water. Of course, the old circuit pavement means that new drainage procedures were far from discovered when the old surface was laid out. So, you had to understand and respect the bumps. Yeah, that's a hashtag itself. Respect the bumps. So if you guys think 12 hours of Sebring is treacherous, which of course that is treacherous, to see it doubled twice around the clock for a 24-hour race was just brilliant. We're going to go through the results now, and of course the championship winners for the categories after that. We'll go class by class per the two divisions. So, of course, the class winner, as you see on the screen, not a Porsche. Porsche, 6 for 6 across multiple teams for scoring overall wins in the 2021 24-hour series. But round 7, it was the Audi. It was number 18, Retronic Racing by TECE, with the one-hit wonder from F1, Marcus Winkelhock, Michael Doppelmayr, Elia Earhart, and Sven Herberger. Nowhere on Pierre Caffer. I know he was on the car and he was on the entry list going into the weekend, but those were the drivers that were credited for bringing the 18 Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo to the win. Of course, not a Porsche. Looked like we were going to have Porsche possibly win this race under Herbert Motorsport, but they did suffer a penalty towards the end due to an infraction, leaving the or disrespecting or what's the code saying? Kraventik. They said for not respecting red flag procedures at pit exit. So they left the pits when the light at the pit exit was red, not green. Ironically, it happened when the red flag came out. And I guess they had to suffer a 120-second time penalty, if I'm not mistaken, by race control. So that's what they had to serve. And of course, when you include the flyers that Marcus Winkelhock put out in his 5-6+ hours of consecutive driving during one of his stints, you are left in the dust, or should I say in the flying wet track rain in second place. And it only came down to 2 cars, but for what there was in 24 hours of competition, 2 cars on the lead lap, that was fun to watch. A gap of 1:44 seconds between first and second, margin of victory. The 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche came home in second. Of course, the team ran by the twin Renauer brothers, Alfred and Robert Renauer, Daniel Alleman and Ralph Bohn in the Porsche 911 GT3 R Car 91, finishing second overall and in class. We'll talk about the class winners as well. We'll go class by class. The third place in the category for the GT3 class was the 10th place overall finisher, the number 92 Herbert Motorsport Porsche 911 GT3R, the sister car to the 91. That car being driven by Juran Herrig, Bobby Gonzalez, Wolfgang Triller, Felix Neuhofer, and Marco Seefried. Their Porsche 10th overall and third in the class. It was treacherous for some of these GT3 teams, I'll tell you that. 4th place and 5th place in the GT3 category retired from the race. Number 10, Liebert Motorsport, Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, had a very interesting lineup of drivers, including Brandon Leach, Tyler Cook, Dennis Fetzer, Seb Morris, and Sebastian Balthasar. Unfortunately, their run to victory came to an end on lap 355. Yeah, I almost forgot to tell you how long did it take for the winner to complete this 24-hour race at Sebring, 559 laps. But let's continue on with the GT3 class finishing. And unfortunately for the hometown favorites in fifth place, the drivers, the gentleman drivers that were once instructors at the Sebring International Raceway, got together and formed a team called CP Racing, being American drivers and over the age of 50. And seeming like this year they have a strong passion for endurance racing, finishing as high second overall at certain points of the year. That, of course, being CP Racing, the number 85 Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo, with Charles Espenlaub, who was the last car to drive before retirement on lap 309 during the overnight hours. Charlie Putman, the team owner, Shane Lewis, and Joe Foster were drivers for that car. Good run for sure in qualifying. They ran very well, led for a lot of the race. Actually, in some of the overnight hours, they were one of the contenders, because these drivers certainly know a lot about Sebring International Raceway, considering that they lived there, they met there, and they've been driving for years there. So it all worked out. Well, unfortunately, it lasted way too soon, and they never got to see the sunrise of Sunday. That was your GT3 class. We're going to move on and talk the Porsche 991 Cup class. In fact, the class winner finished on the overall podium, and a very good run for the 955 Willy Motorsport by Ebby Motors entry, the Romanian team, led by Sergio Nicoli, Fabrizio Broghi, and Sabino De Castro, finishing third overall, getting the class win. And actually, in terms of who finished second in class, 535 laps for the class winner, while 526 laps were completed by second place in the class, the second of two cars in the 991 class. That was the number 907 RPM Racing, and the Krone team, I think, 67-year-old owner driver Tracy Krone in that Krone green entry, still going strong in fielding cars for himself. Nicholas Janssen, Andy Lally, the 2011 NASCAR Cup Rookie of the Year, Nicholas Janssen, a Swedish driving veteran, and Patrick Weissman, a Dutch driving veteran as well. I thought they would have one. Maybe it was going to be them or Willy Motorsport by Ebby Motors taking the class win. I just didn't think they would be finishing third and fourth overall. Very good run for both the teams in the 991 class. Now, for next year's 24H series, there is a new, laugh at however you want, variant of a Porsche Cup car called the Porsche 992 GT3 car, which there'll be another one-make class for the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup coming next year. In fact, those cars were placed in the GTX category for this race. We actually had two of them in the four-car class for GTX. We're going to talk about GTX now. The GTX class was won in dominant fashion by the number 710 Liebert Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo. Not a GT3 Evo, but a Super Trofeo, different version of the Huracan, completing 521 laps, finishing fifth overall. And, of course, the All-American lineup for that car, Al Miller crossed the line with it. Greg Gorski, Gerhard Watzinger, Lance Bergstein, and Kenton Cook completed the lineup for the class victors in GTX. Of course, you know, many parts of the globe, there is a Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Championship, one-make championship with that car around the globe. I think they had like a world championship final or something, much like the Ferrari Challenge like they had this past weekend. Moving on, finishing second in the GTX class, finishing 13th overall, like I said about the Porsche 992 cars. We had the 13th overall finisher, finishing second in the GTX class, was the number 987 MRS GT racing Porsche GT3 992, completing 477 laps. That car, the 987, in fact, MRS GT Racing had 2 cars. The 987 was driven by Alexander Marmarino, Omar Balskiskin, Jeff Courtney, and Sebastian Moreno, finishing second in the category. Rounding out the class podium was the number 701 Vortex V8, Vortex 1.0, the custom manufacturer built by French enthusiasts, led by Felipe Bonel, Boris Gidman, Sebastian Layou, and Steve Brooks. That was your GTX Class podium right there. Now, that Vortex V8 finished 15th overall, completing 458 laps. They experienced several issues. In fact, we caught them spinning a few times during Sunday's afternoon portion of the race. The fourth and final car in the GTX class unfortunately failed to finish the race. That was the sister car, the second Porsche 992, fielded by MRS GT Racing. They finished 22nd overall, completing 256 laps. And nice to say, there were hardly any early retirements in the race. That car, the 989 car, was driven by Pedro Torres, Robert Lorndale, Geronimo Guzman, and Rolindo Crease Jr. So if you guys are curious about what the 992 class might look like for next year, well, look no further than MRS GT Racing. They're based in Germany. They were one of the several teams that had to be transported across the Atlantic. And they might be contenders next year for the inaugural 992 champion. We'll see what happens. By the way, the Porsche 991 class will continue for next year as well. So a lot on the line. A huge investment for the series by Porsche. And next in the categories that followed, let's bring up the actually I'll talk that up next. The category of probably the most competitive class of the race, no question, was GT4. The FIA GT4 regulations put together for some great racing, and Sebring this year for 24 hours proved that this category was absolutely fun to watch. And shared GT4 cars, just like GT3s, have a lot of experience, and we had some experienced teams. A lot of local names were in this race too, from North America and especially from Florida. I'll bring that up in just a moment. Winning the GT4 class was the number 470 NOLA Sports Porsche 718 Cayman GT4, the mid-engine Cayman. That car finished 6th overall, completing a total of 518 laps, but not without a lot of competition. And give a call to these American drivers: Jason Hart, Matt Travis, Anthony Noble, Zach Anderson, and Alex Mayer. And what's funny about that car, it actually had the Me Cougar on the hood, like Ricky Bobby had in the movie about 15 years ago, which was kind of funny, a little humorous there. But hey, still got the job done. And it was a competitive class from start to finish. And maybe the mid-engine 718 Cayman held up well in the rain and the long time night hours. And you really had to have perfect vision to go around Sebring in the night. I mean, the 12-hour race at Sebring, of course, we know that ends at night, but they make sure the race is held just after daylight savings time so that you have a minute percentage of the race held at night. Most of this race was held in night in a 24-hour format. So just think about that for a moment. By the way, IndyCar teams use this track in the offseason, A, because it's in Florida and you can use it at any time of the year you want, and B, because it helps you practice for bumpy street circuits. So there you go. It's a fun fact for you. Finishing second in the GT4 class was the number 438 ST Racing BMW M4 Gt3, finishing one lap behind obviously the class best car in the class all year, Samantha 10 led team. Chandler Holt, John Miller, the trio that's been in the car from start to finish. Nick Whitmer and Bryson Morris from start to finish. Good run for them. They confirmed to run GT3s next year. Of course, dominating the GT4 class with the BMW M4 Gt3, while not behind the class winner. On the class podium in third place, this team never quit, but they really wanted to end up on a class podium battling, and it paid off. Give a call to the Norman-led team. The number 421, finishing 14th overall. Number 421, ACP Tangerine Associates BMW M4 GT4, completing 460 laps. Well, they were out of the class battle from pretty much sunrise on Sunday to the end. They had a lot of time in the garage and still brought it home on the class podium, never quit. Jim and Josh Norman, Ken Goldberg, and Catsby Jones, all-American drivers behind the wheel of that car. I'm sure they've spent a lot of time in the past turning laps around Sebring, and maybe it paid off. Fourth place, unfortunately for this team, it seemed like they had the class win in the bag. A very experienced team, the number 423 Heart of Racing team, Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT4, with drivers Gray Newell, Ian James, Roman DeAngelis, and Alex Riberas. The team that won recently the IMSA Sprint Cup Championship for the GTD category in a GT3 car, that is, and had a great run over there as well. Showed up for this race, and unfortunately with a gearbox failure around, I think it was just before the red flag came out or after the red flag came out, but it was on Sunday in daylight as far as I remember. Had to call it quits on Sunday after leading most of the GT4 class race from the very start. Not from the very start, but from like the early night hours to the morning. That Aston Martin was credited with a 17th place finish, not classified, after 449 laps on the board. It was actually the first retirement listed overall as well, so take that as you will. Fifth place in the class was a team based in Palm Beach, Florida, fielding Mercedes from a local Mercedes dealership in that region of this big state that I'm in. It's number 489, Rentec Motorsports Mercedes AMG GT4. David and Chapman, as well as Wayne Ducat, three of the Ducat family, were in the car. Mercedes factory driver Kyle Marcelli and Alain Metney were in the car. Like I said, this series is very open for drivers of all calibers, all backgrounds, and you see the names of the levels of where these names are attached to come from all different directions. And unfortunately for them, it looked like they had something good going on. I was actually standing behind their pit box for most of practice and qualifying. They started picking up the lap times, but in the race, unfortunately, it all came to an end on lap 289 during the night hours, finishing 20th overall and 5th in the class, and of course 6th place in class. Unfortunately for them, they also had a retirement in the night. That was the number 499 car collection motorsport, the line speed entry, Audi R8 LMS GT4, finishing 21st overall after 269 laps. Very interesting lineup with Jose Garcia, Jorg Vebon, Patrick Niederhauser, longtime factory driver, as well as Patrick Kolb. Looked like they were going to be possible favorites. Well, that GT4 class was fun to watch, but in the end, it was Nullsport who survived. And of course, the only car in the P4 class was the number 82 RLL BMW Motorsports BMW M4 Gt3. The all-new BMW M4 Gt3 was not homologated or not approval after homologation yet by the FIA standards to be placed in Group GT3 events. Therefore, they had to race in their own class, taking the P4 class when with Bill Oberlin, Robbie Foley, James Clay, Neil Verhagen, and Max Hesse. For that team, I was keeping close eyes on the BMW team. They were really just out there to test A, getting ready for the 12 Hours of Sebring next year, and B, testing their new car in a 24-hour race scenario. They did spend a few appearances in the garage area, unfortunately. One during the early night hours after getting punted by, I believe, a GT4 car, and secondary just to repair a few damages and inspect what the car looked like after several hours at the Sebring International Raceway. So that's your GT series results after the 24 hours of Sebring. Now we're going to move on to the TCE division, the TCE series. Of course, they run in the same track, but the touring car division. Let's bring up that performance. And, of course, we knew there was a championship on the line that came down to the very end, unlike the GT division. So the checkered flag was what decided the TCE championship. AC Motorsport tried. They won the battle, but they didn't win the war. We'll talk about that later. But they certainly won a battle that looked like was going to end in heartbreak several times during Sunday afternoon in the race, where they were experiencing mechanical scares. But whatever it was, I guess the problem corrected itself. A very rare occasion to say that in motorsports, but they got away with it, and without it being a catastrophic ending, and still managed to get the class win. It was a dominating race for them. In fact, they put a lap on the competition to win the division, and in the TCR class, the number 188 AC Motorsport Audi RS3 LMS DSG with Rick Breukers behind the wheel, Matthew Taskinen, the Canadian driver, Rick Breukers, the Dutch driver, Matthew Detry, the Belgian driver, and Stéphane Perrin, the French veteran, who was in the car for several of the Saturday hours in the race when the track dried up. But great effort for the Belgian team, and Audi, of course, has a lot to be proud of this weekend, at least for this race, that is. And a valiant effort for the champion Volkswagen team. Well, we know how tough they fight in these 24-hour series events, but it just wasn't enough. The war was won by the number one car, the number one Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing, Volkswagen Golf GTI TCR, with drivers Miel Heyerdahl, Konstantin Kletzer, Fabian Dons, Jasmine Pricing, and Miklas Born. They tried everything, but it just wasn't enough to keep up with the 188 Audi, and therefore it was second place. Third place was the sister car, the green painted Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing, number 112, Volkswagen Golf GTI TCR. That car was driven by Fabian Dons, Nicholas Born, likewise to the one. We had Roberto Ferri and the two Finnish drivers, Kari-Pekka Laskinen and Enti Berry. Nicholas Born actually put the 112 car on pole during qualifying. So that was third place in the division and in the TCR class. Unfortunately for the TCR class, the number 101, the Breukers family team, Audi, never made it to the start. They had a problem that was terminal before the race even began. They luckily discovered it after qualifying, because nobody wants to have a brake failure exhibited on a live racetrack. But unfortunately, whatever other problems they had, it was just terminal, and they didn't take the start. So they got credited with fourth place in the class, retired. The only GCR to retire from the race was the 101 Red Camel Jordan NL Audi RS3 LMS DSG with Ivo and Luke Breukers, Mirko Schultes, and Dominic Bastian. Good run by the 101. Unfortunately, it just never panned out at all, and their offseason began earlier than they wanted it. The TCX class only had 2 cars, but got to give credit to Ligier, or the Nordschleife Racing team. This team, of course, that named they named the team obviously after the Nürburgring Nordschleife, while under a French flag. So I guess they're just big time enthusiasts. I mean, you have to be really passionate to name anything after a racetrack. But the 226 Nordschleife Racing Ligier JS2R, driven by Guilherme Roman, Luca Ayeri, Cedric Huat, and Canadian Michael Sallenbach, took the class win for TCX, completing a total of 491 laps. I know that car spent a lot of time in the garage area, considering only one other competitor in the class. But still, a win is a win, and they deserve it. And give a call to the number 278 CWS Engineering Ginetta G55. 253 laps. In fact, aside from the 101 car, they finished with the checkered flag. They didn't finish enough time in the race to be classified, but they still got the checkered flag and still finished behind all the retirements, minus the 101 car that did not start the race. Of course, the 278 Ginetta was driven by owner driver, 65-year-old veteran Colin White from the UK, and then a quadruple co-driver entry with Americans, with Jean-Francois Bruneau, Matt Rivard, Joe Buris, and Warren Dexter. They spent 6+ hours in the garage area where it's several incidents, but they never quit. And of course, I was there when everybody made it known with the cheers when the 278 car came back out of the garage for the final 15 minutes or so, just so they could take the checkered flag and stay in the fight. And that's what endurance racing is all about, never quitting. Even when the odds are against you, and they still got the class championship. So that was very valiant on their part. With the end of the season comes champions. And of course, the championship was won by Samantha 10 Racing, ST Racing, the BMW M4 GT4. Funny enough, a GT4 winning the outright championship. It happened in the NLS series, the Nürburgring Landesgrenze series, about a month ago, with a car that finishes average about 40th or 50th overall. But this GT4 effort, we saw from the start to the finish that the trio of 10, John Miller, and Chandler Hull, from start to finish, they picked up enough points to where they could end up winning the championship, and thus they did. The 2021 overall champions for the 24H series. The final standings, 130 points to the 438 car, while in second place in the overall championship was the number 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche GT3R. In fact, they broke the tiebreaker with the 18 Ritronic Racing by TECE Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo. Both had 109 points, but Herbert Motorsport, the 91 car, obviously had more wins than the 18 car, so they get the nod for second in the final standings. Third place, or actually fourth place, I meant, because third was tied, was the 955 Willie Motorsport by Ebby Motors Porsche 991 GT3 Cup with 107 points. And fifth place, unfortunately, for the number 701 Vortex V8, Vortex 1.0. They were only the other driver to win that could have won the overall championship, but a poor finish meant they claimed only 98 points in the very end. But they still had a good effort. Watching the Vortex on the track, that beautiful orange design, it was fun to watch while it happened. And that put them fifth overall. So, of course, with the two divisions come class championships. We're going to bring up the class championship and the GT3 effort, which was Alfred Renauer himself. The GT3 class championship went to the number 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche 911 GT3R. Alfred Renauer gets the credit for the driving championship in that car. Alfred started all the races, so he gets the driver's championship trophy himself. Unfortunately, his brothers and the other drivers for the team did not, but they came shy of an overall championship. Good effort while it lasted, and I'm sure it would have been a lot better had that car win overall at Sebring over the Ritronic Audi, but it was still a good effort on their part. The GTX Class Championship went to the number 701 Vortex V8 Vortex 1.0. Felipe Bonnell is the sole driving champion for that car. So they were able at one point to win the overall championship, but they did get the class championship for GTX. The Porsche 991 Cup class was won by the number 955 Lily Motorsport by Ebby Motors, with the trio of Sabino De Castro, Sergio Nicoli, and Fabrizio Broghi. They were very happy at the end, just by all the efforts and the amazing drive they put to close out a class championship winning season by finishing third outright at Sebring. A lot of grins from that team leaving the track. GT4 Class Championship, that's not even a question. It was, of course, the outright champion, the 430 ST Racing BMW M4 Gt3 with Samantha Tan, John Miller, and Chandler Hull. That was decided long before the overall championship was even close to being decided. The two trophies that come with the divisions are the Ladies' Cup and the Junior Cup. Samantha Tan and the 438 BMW won both of those with these. That was already decided long ago. Now in the TCE division, the Touring Car Endurance division for the 24H Series championship was won altogether outright by the number one. It was close, but it had to come down to the checkered flag. Every position mattered, but in the end, it was the number one Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing, Volkswagen Golf GTI TCR with 123 points, in the duo of Emil Heyerdahl and Konstantin Klutzer taking the championship win, 123 points. It was close, but not close enough for the number 188 AC Motorsport Audi RS3 LMS DSG effort that won the class on Sunday's checkered flag. They had 117 points. It came down to the very end. Third place, while this entry, of course, the 112 Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing Volkswagen Golf GTI TCR, that sister car to the one, they weren't really in the championship fight going to the last race, but they had to do a lot of team playing to help the one on multiple occasions. Still, were 2 points away from getting second, but third for 115 points in the overall TCE championship. Fourth place was the number 278 CWS Engineering Ginetta G55, 102 points, and fifth place the number 226 Nordschleife Racing Ligier JS2R with 46 points. That's your overall top five for the final standings in the TCE division for the 24H series. The TCR class, of course, that was easily won by the number one Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing Volkswagen Golf GTI TCR, the duo of Heyerdahl and Klutzer win that. Emil Heyerdahl, he was very pleased with that. Very good driver, just 20 years old, I believe, and has a great career down the road. VW factory driver. Maybe there'll be a place for him in endurance racing or just TCR competition, wherever it is. The future is bright. The TCX class was won ages ago before this race. The 278 CWS Engineering Ginetta G55, the duo of Colin White, the owner, and Jean-Francois Bruneau won the TCX Class Championship, I think, before the race even started. The two trophies that are given out for the Ladies' Cup and the Junior Cup were both decided by Autorama's drivers. The Ladies' Cup went to Jasmine Pricing, who drove the 1 and the 112 Volkswagen for the Autorama team, and the Junior Cup was easily won by Emil Heyerdahl in the number 1 and number 112 Volkswagen Golf. So overall, in the end, that category came down to the checkered flag, while the GT Championship was kind of decided long beforehand. And the season is in the books, and I was glad to be there for this race. And there were a lot of entries originally for the 24 hours of Sebring. While many pulled out due to issues with logistics and travel, in the end, it was a race that went successful, and I was glad to be there. The environment was great. The atmosphere was awesome. And if you guys are near the Sebring area, go. If you're in Central Florida, go. It's worth the drive. It's worth the stay. It's a nice getaway, especially if you don't live there. And I think if you live there, it's just as great. Let's move on to a world championship that was decided this past weekend. That was the World Rally Championship, and no question about it. Congratulations to the French sensation of Sébastien Ogier, his 8th World Rally Championship. The final standings for the World Rally Championship for drivers, we had Sébastien Ogier, 230 points, Elfyn Evans, 207 points, Thierry Neuville with 176 points, Kalle Rovanpera, 142 points, and Ott Tanek at 128 points. And 142 for the guy above. For the World Rally Championship for co-drivers, obviously that went to Julien Gracia. His 8th World Rally Championship was won, of course, all with Sébastien Ogier, the French pair. Get it done again. 230 points for Ingracia. Scott Martin in second with 207 points. Martin Jean Witaki in third with 176 points. Jone Haltunen in fourth with 142 points. And Martin Yarivola at 128 points. That's your top 5 in the World Rally Championship for co-drivers. And, of course, for the World Rally Championship for manufacturers, the second championship going to Toyota Gazoo Racing WRT with 522 points. Hyundai Shell Mobis WRT in second with 463 points. M Sport Ford WRT in third, 200 points. And Hyundai 2C Competition, the junior team to the Shell Hyundai bunch, picking up 68 points in the end in fourth place. So another year, another Ogier World Rally Championship victory. I think that was it. It was hard to deny them. I think the dynasty will continue. You know, Sebastian Loeb, Colin McRae, some of these great rally drivers that we've seen in the past. They continue to show that age is just a number, and especially for the Ogier fans and the fans of Toyota Gazoo Racing, a season to be proud of. So, upcoming this weekend, we have the Snowball Derby, the Bathurst 1000, or not this weekend, but next weekend. We don't really have much this weekend other than Super GT, the final race at Fuji Speedway, and the FIA World Touring Car Championship. The TCR Championship will be decided in Russia at Sochi Autodrome for the 8th and final week of the season, and the 8th and final race for Japan's premier sports car championship with Super GT at Fuji Speedway. So if you want to watch any racing this Thanksgiving weekend, better change your alarm clock to watch some Super GT. With all that, I will glance a little bit into the upcoming races that we have, of course, other than F1. There are special events such as the Snowball Derby, Bathurst 1000, the 9 Hours of Kyalami, the third and final race of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. I think it's pretty much the final major sports car endurance race of the calendar year. That will be an interesting race to watch, as it has always been. Let's go ahead and look into the Snowball Derby for 2021. The Snowball Derby is a major short track stock car race in Pensacola, Florida at the Five Flags Speedway, and it is a chilly event. It's usually very cold temperatures, like temperatures that flirt around the freezing ranks. You'll see your own breath kind of temperature in Florida that, you know, the Florida that I live in does not really experience as much as the Florida in the Panhandle does. With the cold track comes short fuse of tempers and short track drivers of all sizes and ages and just backgrounds. It's a fun getaway for a week. If you live in Pensacola or if you live in Tallahassee, go to FSU, go to the Snowball Derby. It's a great event. And a lot of teams show up because either they have the fundings or they just love the sport so much that they want to be there. So I will pull up the entry list for 2021, see who is on the calendar. And of course, it's not just a Snowball Derby, but the entry list continues to file in every single day at this point. So I'm likely, okay, 404 page not found. Oh, that's from 2020. Okay, at least the website was smarter than me. Let's look at the Five Flags Speedway website, because the track hosts the event, and this event has been around for what, 50? This is the 54th Snowball Derby. Let me see here. Okay, there's an entry list. And of course, the Snowflake 100 is also another huge event. That's a Saturday, like a card event for the Snowball Derby. And you usually get a lot of people there as well. That event is held on the Saturday of the weekend. So I'm looking through this entry list. We have Chase Hansen, Michael House, Brendan Watson, Ryan Crane, Derek Griffith, Cassius Clark, Carson Hosvar, Carter Okrezik, Chase Purdy, Hunter Robbins, John Bolin, Harrison Halder, Derek Kraus, Jeff Choquette, Jesse Love. Let me see, Mike Garvey, Sammy Smith, the ARCA East champions on the entry list here. Chandler Smith is a great short track driver. Grant Enfinger is not too far from his home in Fairhope, Alabama in this race. In fact, this is a track that really helped his career in stock car racing. Eric Jones, the 2012 winner of this race. He was just a high schooler and beat Kyle Busch to win that race. And what happened next? Kyle Busch was so impressed by how he was beat that he signed Eric Jones to his Truck Series team, eventually convincing Cup Series owner Joe Gibbs to put him on the team, and the rest is history. While he's not in Joe Gibbs Racing anymore, Eric Jones is a very decorated NASCAR driver. That's what a short track race like the Snowball Derby can do to you. Luke Fenhouse, 17 years old, won another major short track race this year, of course, being the Slinger Nationals, and of course, the incentive being by the SRX, that for when they were in the race at the Slinger Speedway, the Slinger Nationals winner, whoever that may be, would be invited. Luke Fenhouse, 17 years old, was on that entry list and was part of the SRX event. Fun stuff. Daniel Dye, another driver who is going to come through the ranks. He's under a Chevrolet contract as a development driver for GMS Racing, which is a NASCAR team about to enter their first year in the Cup Series. Let's see. Rich Bickle. How about Rich Bickle? He's in his 60s now, and did confirm that this will be his second to last race in his historic racing career. The Wisconsin native, of course, like many Wisconsin stock car drivers, found their peak in success on short tracks, and Rich Bickle is no different. He will be in the race, or in the entry list for the race. Let's see, anybody else. Stephen Nasse, knocking on the door for victory. He was shy a few times. There's another driver that you cannot look away from. Let's see here. Cole Butcher from Nova Scotia. Let's see here. Brian Priest, the modified champion. One of the best drivers in New England. Ryan Priest. Let's see. Anybody else? Corey Heim, the only driver in the entire ARCA championship that seemed to have kept Ty Gibbs at bay from ultra dominance. See, Jet Nolan from Sarasota, Florida. Perry Patino. Ty Majeski, last year's winner. Ty Majeski's on the entry list from Wisconsin. He's one of the best short track drivers ever. He made last year's race look very easy. Caden Honeycutt and Casey Smith. That's 54 cars total on the entry list, and I'm not going to be shocked at all if we come back next week and there will be more entries. But I forgot how many cars make the race. I think it's like 30-something cars make the main event. But let's continue and see what. So December 5th is the Snowball Derby. Then December 4th, I believe, is the Snowflake 100 Alan Turner Pro Late Model event. We have Outlaws, Pro Trucks, Sportsman, Pure Stock. A lot of racing. Outlaws, Modifieds. Okay, the Snowflake 100. These Alan Turner Pro Late Model 54th Annual Snowflake 100. That's the race that's held on Saturday of the weekend. I think it's the same specs of cars that are allowed to run it. Usually, we have a lot of the same names that run on Sunday, race on Saturday. And let's look at that entry list. Audrey Grill, big time name. Derek Griffith, Justin Bonnet, Connor Jones, uh, a young hotshot right there. Let's see. Johanna Long Robbins, the 2010 winner of the Snowball Derby, the second of two females to win the main event on the Sunday of the weekend. She will be in the Snowflake 100. Mike Garvey, former NASCAR veteran from Pensacola, Florida, grew up racing in the circuit. Let's see, anybody else? Bubba Pollard, there's another name. How could we ever forget Bubba Pollard? Let's see anybody else here. Kyle Plott, Derek Thorne, well, he'll run both races. Stephen Nasse, he's a blue-collar driver for sure. Jarrett Butcher, Jet Nolan. Anybody else that pops up? 58 entries for the Snowflake 100. That's phenomenal. So I think that's all you guys need to know. I mean, for now, we're gonna make our predictions. Like, hopefully, Justin and Danny will be on the podcast next week with me. When I could do that, that would be fun to always do. Making those predictions, Snowball Derby predictions are always the toughest ones to make, as is any major event. We'll talk more about Bathurst. I already made my little sneak peek into the Bathurst 1000 weekend. But what about the 9 hours of Kyalami? Let's see if there's any entry list out there for the third and final race of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Kyalami 9 hours held in South Africa, former home of the South African Grand Prix. Or if there is an entry list. Hey, there's a wiki article. I wonder if there's an entry list attached to it. Okay, there's a lot of drivers that are not confirmed, but for what the drivers that I see are confirmed, we have into Africa mining entry of trio of South African drivers. In fact, there's a national cup. I think that the IGTC will, the SRO sanctioning body will offer. Audi does have their lineups confirmed. Most of their lineups are confirmed, including the Team WRT trio of Marcus Winkelhoff, fresh off a 24-hour victory, Enkel Mueller, Kelvin van der Linde, and then the Belgian trio, Charles Weerts, Frederick Versvich, and Dries Van Tor. Santinluck Racing has Matteo Drudy, Christopher Haas, Patrick Niederhauser. High Class Racing, the Danish team will field an Audi for Anders Fjordbach, Michael Markussen, and Mark Patterson. We have another unique team of Team Dynamics Simpson Motorsport running a Mark Mustang V2 Ford with James Cage, Simon Murray, and Henry Neal. That's an invitational class. I wonder if we'll see any of next year's GT3s run it as well, like we've seen in recent sports car events with Audi and BMW. But that's going to be, I'm sure we're going to get a nice, clear version of the entry list come next week when it comes to the week of the race. With all that, I think it's a good time to sign off from the Below the Yellow Line podcast. thank you all for watching, and for those who will watch the recording, thank you for tuning in as well. Obviously, everybody that helped me go to the track and be able to enjoy the race while covering the event, thank you too. We'll see you guys next week, probably on a more concrete timetable for the podcast, and preview all those special events as they come. I'm Joe Laney Pavlon signing off. Have a great rest of the week.